Hey, welcome back to the Abundant OD podcast. Today we're talking with Dr. Bradley Grant, who founded Midstate Eye in 2016 with a first office in Shelbyville, Illinois. He's since grown that practice to 3 locations and also founded Eye, Wisconsin in 2022 with now 3 locations there. He and his wife have 3 kids. So he's usually involved in some sort of family activity, active in sporting activities, coaching basketball, and something I was really interested to hear him talk about, which is the infamous Pink Eye softball team. Bradley, first off, welcome. Thanks for spending your time with us here this afternoon. And what is the infamous Pink Eye softball team?
So the Pink Eye softball team is I wouldn't say legendary in Central Illinois, but it's well known in Decatur, or was at the time. So my daughter, who's now 11, when she was around, I want to say around 7 to 10, we had it's basically just a rec league softball team. But being in a smaller community, we would always get asked to sponsor, and so because I was sponsor and coach, I felt like we had the right to name the team, and so we had Midstate Eye on the back of the jerseys, and then we decided on the name the Pink Eyes because everybody was, like the Cardinals or the Clubbers or something like that. So we went with something more creative. But the real kick is the slogan, and we told this to everybody who asked why we were the Pink Eyes, because we said it was so much fun, it's contagious. So and we and we had fun seasons. I think I did share that. Everybody liked the name except for my daughter. She was she would have loved to be anything but the Pink Eyes. So,
of course. She's like, Dad, that's lame.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. What a great story. And very creative. I love it. So give us, I know we were just having a pre-show chat about all the great things you're doing in your practice, in your organization. Talk to me a little bit first. I do like to get a sense of people's background and how they initially got into the profession. And then I want to jump into some of the things we were just chatting about.
Right. So background, like where I went to optometry school or even before that, or
Yeah. Or just a general sense, like what got you interested in the profession? A lot of times we ask these questions, we find that sometimes optometry got the hook into people at an early age and they just stuck with it and continued loving it, and it progressed from there. And some people, sometimes it wasn't necessarily the first love after high school. So just talk to us like how you got into it.
Yeah. So going to undergraduate, I really didn't even necessarily know that's what I was going for. It wasn't that I was going for that from the start. So when growing up, no one in my family was in healthcare in any way, but my dad was self-employed. And so I knew that being a business owner was actually one of my aspirations. And so I went into college, undergraduate, pre-med, and throughout the course of the years of undergraduate, I followed around a few different specialties. And it was interesting because I would ask them, if you could start over, would you do it again? And it was astounding how many said no in different specialties, or just really didn't seem to have an overall joy for what they did on a day-to-day basis. And I followed around a couple optometrists, and they just seemed to really enjoy what they did. They seemed to be passionate about it, and they were a resounding yes to that answer, or to answer that question when I asked it to them. And that spoke really loudly to me. And so, say my junior year, I started angling more that way, in time to take the OAT. And so started focusing on that, and then ended up attending Southern College of Optometry in Memphis, which was, a fantastic experience. Actually, my wife and I we got married right out of undergraduate. So I was married going to school down in Memphis. And so my wife worked at St. Jude, fantastic experience living in Memphis. And then straight out of optometry school, we did a cold start actually in the Nashville area, which is not any of my practices that we have now. A great friend of mine that I went to school with, him and I opened a practice, cold start practice in Franklin, Tennessee in 2007, and had that for about 6 years. was growing, cold start to cold start, right? So it starts out, you don't pay yourself any money from your practice, you moonlight to make some money. So both of him and I did that, and did that for 6 years. And then through some different circumstances, family illness, my father got sick. That brought us back to Illinois, which is where I'm from. And then worked in ophthalmology clinic for a couple years, and then kind of got myself reestablished before we opened Mid-State Eye in 2016. So that's how we landed, at least at the starting point of where we are now.
For sure. Oh, great. Thanks for sharing. So, so we were talking about, it caught my eye, or ear rather, when you were saying, as I thought you only had like 3 or 4 locations, but you had the 3 in Illinois under Mid-State Eye, and then you have 3 now in Wisconsin, under Eye, Wisconsin, that you just started in 2022. And I asked you about that, and you started talking to me about this great program you have, essentially acquiring practices kind of with the leader already in place, and then giving them a clear path to owning their own practice, right? So talk to us a little bit about that, and kind of like, what the ultimate, well, I guess that is the ultimate goal, is giving them a clear path to ownership. But how did you like stumble across that model, and why are you so passionate about giving them that kind of opportunity?
Well, I think that, just what got us thinking that way was the state of optometry as it is now. There's a lot of private equity in the space. There's a lot of turnover of practice ownership. And, we grew organically from 1 to 2 to 3 in Illinois. Just happened to be not even necessarily looking for opportunities, but individuals were retiring. We would hear about opportunities, and then just happen to be right place, right time, and have the doctor coverage to be able to make the acquisition and make it work. And so we had that infrastructure in place, I guess, to grow to more locations. And so because of that, going out of state, or actually a location where, myself or another owning doctor wasn't really boots on the ground in any way, it didn't seem like such a huge leap. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is, with private equity in the space and acquiring practices, they're only really looking for a certain size and type of practice. And I feel like there's a lot of locations that are not on the radar of private equity, but still are fantastic locations, would be excellent for younger, really hungry ODs, if you want to say it that way, ambitious ODs that want to, have their own office, but maybe just don't have all of that in place to be able to say, okay, I'm in a job right now. I don't know what the actual next step is to be able to acquire that practice. So we decided that we were going to build a system to where we acquire the practices. We always only acquire the practice if we have a doctor in place, because that's obviously the biggest, X factor. If you don't have a doctor, then you have no promise for future revenues, right? You have to have a doctor in place. So we have those conversations on the front end. And basically, anytime that we have an acquisition in this way, and all of ours in Wisconsin are this way, that those ODs that are joining us have a well-defined schedule of a 10-year plan to be 100% owner of that practice. So we bear the risk, with the acquisition, we bear the financial burden. And it allows individuals who have never been in ownership before to learn the ropes of managing staff, of cash flow, of bookkeeping, of insurance, third-party navigation, all the stuff that you can be a great doctor, you just may not know any of that other stuff. I think it's very much teachable to everybody, would be my opinion, but maybe you just don't have the experience. And it does, you gain experience, you gain value. And so we've just been able to bring on really ambitious, very talented individuals that want to be a practice owner one day, and we're helping them to reach that goal. So that's our model. That's how we've been trying to grow in our acquisition, I guess, seeking is certain size practices, certain patient volume versus revenue. All the business metrics, you can get into that, but it's smaller than would normally be a private equity type location, but still a very, very viable practice with great room for growth and expansion.
That's awesome.
Did I get too long on that? Did I answer?
No. I think Yeah, no, I think that's great. So
Yeah.
so when you're working with that model, like, because I think it's a great, even though I don't think you refer to it internally as like a program, like it's kind of how I do. I mean, it's all laid out, right? As you
Mhm.
said, for that OD who's joining your practice at the time or shortly after at the acquisition, or probably shortly before rather, and
Mhm.
um, and getting to, as you said, kind of learn the ropes of private ownership without having to be worried about bearing all the financial burden right away, right? And then so it allows them to kind of organically come into their own, so to speak, into a private practice environment.
Right.
And have you found, so you probably haven't gotten to the point, because I think you mentioned it was a 10-year path.
Right.
So you haven't got to the point yet where you've actually uh, uh, gotten past that mark, right? Because this was just
We haven't gotten to
what,
where
seven, eight
we've
years ago.
100%
Yeah.
right. We do have multiple minority equity partners in different branches of our Illinois and Wisconsin locations. So we have navigated the first parts of those practice transitions and equity buy-ins, but going from 10% to 20 to 30 to 50, that we haven't crossed that bridge yet. But we feel like, in fairness, if it's spelled out to those doctors before we start, it's not, because if the practice does better than you anticipate, well, then, sometimes owners want to change the game on the associate and say, oh, well, it's really worth this, or,
Yeah.
why don't I hang on to it for a little bit longer? So we try to be as upfront as possible so that they know they're getting the, full clarity. And then their benefit, right? They're going to be buying a practice that they're completely familiar with, right? It's not going out and, like we're going out and buying and acquiring a practice that we don't we haven't been there day to day, right? And so there's greater risk on our side, but they don't have to bear that risk because they've been working there for many years. They know the ins and outs, and they know that it has cash flow to, at that point in time, there's not the risk of, cash flow, because it's had historical cash flow for many years, and so it's a much safer investment on their side.
Sure, sure. So what have been, I mean, you kind of talked about navigating some challenges and kind of bringing that idea into reality, but is there any particular ones that you've overcome so far, challenges in kind of rolling out that model or continuing to expand on it that you've overcome that have been fairly meaningful for you?
I think it's all just comes back to the team that you have in place. I do. We are fortunate to have a leadership team in place that is not just myself. I think that the challenge has been not bearing all of the workload to the owning equity doctors, and to really building a team that you trust, that you can delegate, and you can give a lot more responsibility to. There's always surprises, different things that you don't think about. You get a phone, I forgot to turn the water bill into mine. All those little things. You get the million different tasks that are assigned to an acquisition each time, and inevitably there's something that I get an email a month in and be like, I thought you were going to do that. I'm like, yeah, I thought I was going to as well. I totally forgot. But for the most part, it's just building that team that you trust.
Yeah, super important. Very good. So earlier when we were talking too on the pre-show chat, we were talking about your mission statement, because so many small business owners, whether it's in optometry or otherwise, don't have them. And so I think it's like super important to have something that you as an organization stand behind. And I noticed you had one as well. And it's to be, your actual mission statement here is to be kind always, to be respectful always, and to provide the highest quality of eye care and service to the communities of Central Illinois always. And that's off of Mid-State Eye. So I'm sure you've modified that for your other
We did,
practices.
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Wisconsin people don't
Wisconsin.
care as much that we take care of Central Illinois.
Yeah, exactly. And probably vice versa, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so, and so we were talking about, one of the things that you guys are most passionate and proud about is how you're serving some of the other members of your community in a day and age where a lot of people, and I get wrapped up into these conversations as well, right? Talking about profitability and maximizing efficiencies. And there's all those metrics and things that, yeah, are super important if you're going to be successful. But part of I would classify it as part of the giving back component, because there's always different ways to give back, right? We give back in terms of money and in terms of time and expertise or knowledge, right? So, in terms of your time and expertise, really, you're giving back with helping some other members of the community. Talk about that a little bit, because I think that was really really impactful.
One of the staples that we have with all of our locations is that we do accept public aid plans. And as you mentioned, there's as you're running your metrics and you're trying to keep your per patient revenue as high as you can and maximizing the hours and filling your schedule and being smart with the schedule, all of those conversations are conversations that we're having on a day-to-day basis. But with our mission statement from day one, and just what we said is, we're not going to have a conversation about kicking people out, kicking out plans, saying we're not seeing this type of individual, because they're people and they're human lives. In many cases, it's their families, or they may be driving 60 miles to see us because we're the only ones in the region that take that plan. There's something to be said about the respect and dignity that you can give to every single individual. And that's what we're passionate about. And I fully understand the metrics of how that makes it harder to be profitable. But we've said that doesn't mean that you have to just change course, right? Let's be smarter about how we can be more efficient. Let's be smarter about how we build systems and efficiencies in place where we can see those individuals and still be profitable. And I think it's definitely a challenge, but we talked about staff, we talked about team. If I'm being honest, if that wasn't our mission statement, if that wasn't who we were, I don't think we would have the ridiculously amazing staff that we have. A lot of our our opticians, our technicians, our front desk, they know that that's who we are, and they know that that's who we serve, and that makes them excited to come to work. It's not just about glasses and contacts to them. It's about serving the community. And so I think that has all helped us build the team, because we rally around a purpose where we're trying to take care of people. And as much as I dive into the numbers, there's nobody that dives into the numbers more than me. There's got to be time when you just say, who are we doing good for, and and how are we doing?
Yeah, I think that's really when we talk. I mean, look, the title of the interview series is The Abundant OD, right? And sort of that tone of abundance thinking and living is just like what you're saying. Being able to, because I talk to a lot of people across a lot of different industries, right? And some in my own industry, in like the accounting and tax profession, and it's similar conversations. It changes depending on who you talk to, but some of the people who are not of the same mindset, perhaps as you just described, are talking the exact opposite. Like, we got to kick those people out. We gotta fire them. And there's always, like, when I hear those kind of conversations, I get it from the business standpoint,
right?
But then I don't get it from the human standpoint, right? It's like, so it makes me cringe a little bit. So when you brought that up and offered that as an item here for us to talk about today, I was like super excited, right? Because I'm like, this is somebody who gets it and has been able to serve all levels of the community, in spite of, maybe not in spite of, that's probably a bad term, but regardless of it pulling down. So you've overcome that challenge. You're still successful, even with taking on maybe some of what others would consider the less profitable patients, right? So because, like I said, at the end of the day, we're all people, and they all need health, healthy eyes and attention. So
I'll tell you just an interesting aside to that, if you got a minute.
For sure.
As part of when I was in Tennessee and was moonlighting, because my practice was lucky to pay the light bill, I worked actually for a glaucoma specialist in southern Tennessee. And he's a brilliant man and fantastic practice, but they're the same way. They had, they were took every kind of medical insurance and, sick, unhealthy eyes. And, what I learned from him more than anything else, it was not, I mean, obviously I learned a lot about glaucoma and treatment and all of those things, but the one quote that he said that stuck with me for much, much longer was, when we were having the same conversation, he said, you know what, at the end of the day, I just know that my mom wouldn't be happy with me if I told them they couldn't come in. And I thought, you know what, for a Harvard trained glaucoma specialist, that was pretty a genius statement. So stuck with me.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, no, I love that. And when we circle all this back around to your mission statement, right? You were talking about how impactful that is for your team and, the team that sticks with you and really gets behind it. And I think, again, across a lot of industries, right? A lot of businesses out there, where there's different things or different levels of this, right? So if you don't have a mission statement, that's one thing, but there are others who kind of do and thought it was like, it was an assignment their consultant or business coach gave them, or it's something that they heard of and they see out there, but they don't really live it. And then there's examples like you that who are actually living it and referencing back to it in the decisions that you're making in your practice, right? And I think your team obviously sees that and rallies around it as well. So that's really, when we talk about the power of having like a vision and a mission statement, these are not just exercises we learned in business school for big corporations, right? They're real things that have impact. Yeah. And so that's really cool to see in action. Very good. Look, in wrapping up, you've given us so much time today, and I really appreciate it. What is, and maybe you've already dropped it, but if not, what's another piece of advice you'd give to others on their journey, whether that's, just being the best OD they can or looking to improve their own practice?
Right. So I would say, and I think I'm speaking to myself when I say this out loud, as much as I sweat over numbers and metrics and every day diving into those things, I think that when you're in the practice management, practice growth, if you're cold start, whatever that is, setting goals for yourself in a numeric way, but also a non-numeric way, right? We've kind of talked about that a little bit. Certainly set goals on PPR and gross revenue and profitability and EBITDA and all those things. Certainly, put systems in place to help you get there, but make sure you're putting benchmarks in that are not numeric, right? That are, you can call it happiness indicators. Make sure your staff is enjoying their lives. Make sure that you're enhancing the lives of the individuals that you interact with every day, right? Give yourself a break, if you will, right? I mean, I think sometimes we set up numbers and we reach it and then we just move the finish line only to make ourselves feel worse about it, right? Give yourself a little bit of a break, make some non-numeric goals that you can enjoy, because it's a great profession. We're all lucky to be able to do what we get to do. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And so, rest in that a little bit, right? Don't always strive. Yeah. And that's like, I'm talking to myself there. But, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great reminder too, that that we call those quantitative and qualitative goals, right?
Right.
And it's the same thing. And definitely important for everybody. And I like what you said about, giving yourself a break and not always, we were talking before about how, so I think there was a book that I'm going to forget the exact name of, but I don't even know if it was, I don't remember. It's been so long ago since I read it. So I won't bring up too much, but when you were talking about before the acquiring practices and giving folks a path, those ODs a path to owning their own and having it be clear and in writing, as a lot of times others will kind of either intentionally or unintentionally, like kind of move the cheese almost to under their noses, right? And be like, oh, just string them along a little bit more. Again, some people are very intentional.
Just a little decimal point.
Yeah, right. right? So yeah, what's a decimal or two between friends, really?
Yeah.
So and you know, doing it, but we're doing it to ourselves as well, is what I just heard you kind of bring up there also, which I see quite a bit of, which is you know, celebrate those wins along the way, both qualitative and quantitative, and you got to have those qualitative or non-numerical ones set first before you can celebrate reaching them, right?
Yeah.
And then stop moving the cheese on yourself all the time. That's great. That's great advice. So very good. Well, again, Bradley, thank you so much for all your time today. I really appreciate it. This is really
Thank
great.
you.
You bet.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. And we'll hope to talk to you again here soon. All right. Have a good day.
Great. Thank you.